Welcome back to another episode of Luxury Fridays. I'm your host, Michael LaFIdo. I'm really excited about today's episode. We have a special guest. We're going to be talking about how to protect your clients, and we're going to be talking about land trust. And so, again, if you are a consumer, if you own a home, you're buying a home, again, we're not just talking about high net worth individuals and celebrities with protecting privacy, but it could be a lot of other people. So we're going to be talking about that today. Please type in your comments if you let us know where you're watching from or which device you're watching from. And that's also where you'll ask any questions you have for our guests today. And again, those of you that are watching on Instagram, the best way for you to interact, you can type in your comments. But if you go to YouTube and you go to Marketing Luxury Group, which is our YouTube channel, you can watch the live stream. You can ask questions, or if we're connected on Facebook or LinkedIn, you can watch it there as well. But YouTube is usually the best platform for this. So again, this is Michael LaFIdo. I'm looking forward to bringing on our guest here in a few minutes. But just a reminder, this is Luxury Fridays. We come to you each Friday. Typically, we're at noon Eastern, 11 Central, unless there's a conflict. And if you go to luxuryfridays.com, you can see it going across the bottom there. You will see the top link, which is typically our live stream link. We usually update that midweek, but if you go to our YouTube channel and you hit that red subscribe button, so if you go to Marketing Luxury Group on YouTube, and I'll type that in, if you hit that red button that says subscribe, whenever we do a live stream, you'll be notified, and that's probably the easiest way. So if you go to YouTube, and on Marketing Luxury Group is the name of our channel, you will be notified, and I'm going to put that right up here now. You'll be notified when we live stream. So that's the best way for you guys never to miss an upcoming live stream. If you go to Marketing Luxury Group on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We're always providing content and hopefully raising the bar. Just a reminder, as the market shifts, people are always looking for that easy button, and there's no such thing as the easy button. Unfortunately, too many people are looking for it, and it just doesn't exist. So with that being said, I want to remind you of a couple things. If you have any questions, you can type them in the comments section. Literally, if you have a question, type them in the comments section throughout today's live stream or next week's. If you're watching a replay of this live stream, the best way to send me a question is through email, and you can literally send that to michael@marketingluxurygroup.com. Myself or my assistant will get back to you, michael@marketingluxurygroup.com. And that is the best way to get a hold of me. So we are going to be bringing on our guests today, and we're going to be talking about land trust. And again, on our Luxury Fridays, we have various guests on. Sometimes they're top luxury agents. Sometimes they're newer agents that are struggling. I just had on a new agent a couple of weeks back. I had Dugan Riley on, who interned for me last summer. And Dugan moved to Nashville, didn't know anybody. And he's 3 months into the business, just got a $1.9 million listing, and he's hosted 15 open houses at other people's listings. So that was our 204th podcast, or you can watch the replay of our Luxury Fridays on our YouTube channel, Marketing Luxury Group. So I'd love to know where you guys are watching from, and that will be something we'll pull you on. If you want to have ask a question and you'd actually like me to bring you on camera, I'm going to type in the comments section. Look at the comments section, and you can click on that link or copy and paste that link into your browser. You don't need to download anything. And literally, that is how you can come on camera. All right. Those again on Instagram, go to our YouTube channel. Ontario, Deborah, watching from Ontario. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us. And she's got a great question. I have another question on here. So let's start with our first question before I bring David on. And he's saying, aside from expireds, okay, Michael, can you talk about luxury lead gen aside from expires if I can't afford direct mail yet? Great question. So you need to go to where the money is if that's the case. So you need a network. You need to join a chamber of commerce that caters those upper price points and get to know business owners. That's number one. Number two is you should try to host open houses at other people's luxury properties because the luxury buyers will come there. But you need to go to nonprofits. You could go to the country clubs, join chambers. The question was, if he doesn't have the money to invest in mailers, what is a way to do luxury lead gen? And the key is you want to network with other high net worth individuals and business owners. We can dive a lot deeper on this, but I wanted to answer your question. Please keep the questions coming. The best way for my Instagram people to ask questions is on the live stream so I can keep my focus on the monitor. All right, I'm going to bring our guest on today. We have people watching in California. Thank you so much for joining us. And Zach from Chicago. Again, type in the comment section where you're watching from. That is letting us know that we're reaching globally, hopefully not just in the U.S. And we're excited, and that's what we're doing here, is raising the bar. Just a reminder, before I bring on the guest, our next live stream, our next in-person designation event is literally 25 days away. And I want to share with you what that looks like. If you go to luxurydesignation.com, you'll see we're coming to Milwaukee in 25 days. There's 0 previous luxury sales required if you want to get certified in luxury, or if you need a refresher. I've had literally agents go to multiple designation events and they say they get something from each one. So that next one is in Milwaukee, and we'll literally have people flying in for that. And there's very limited room. So please go to luxurydesignation.com. We're including a bunch of bonus items. If you scroll down, watch the video, we have some sponsors. But if you look at the bonus, we have over $2,445 in bonus materials. We're including a video book. We're doing coaching calls. Okay, the video brochure's got a 10-inch monitor and a lot of other freebies. You go to luxurydesignation.com. All right, I'm going to bring in, by the way, our last podcast guest was Dugan Riley. It's up. If you go to, literally, I'll put it on the screen right now, but if you go to luxurylistingpodcast.com, Luxury Listing Podcast, or go to iTunes, you can listen to the 204th episode that was just released yesterday. And don't forget about our blog. We have educational information out there, including 3 reasons for land trust. And that's a great segue. To my guest. I'm going to bring him on camera. David, how are you?
Good morning, Michael. Thank you for having me.
I got David Lanciotti from Chicago Title Land Trust Company. He's been involved with land trust for over 20 years. I'm going to put their website up there right now. So literally you guys can check out the resources they have at ctlandtrust.com, ctlandtrust.com. Stands for Chicago Title Land Trust. And we're going to be talking about land trust. But when I go to own my house, or you own your home, or somebody watching this, you own it. Typically, most people own it in their name, right? Without going all the legal terms, tell us a little bit how most people hold title in their name. And again, I'm not just talking to Illinois agents. We're talking across the U.S. today. And we have a birthday guy on here. I'm going to give him a shout. I got Ryan Horvath is saying Dave is the man. Happy birthday, Ryan. Make 35 a great year, okay? The best is yet to come, my friend. And we have somebody that has a question here, too. So, Harry, I see you in the waiting room. Harry, type in your question for right now, and then I'll bring you on when we're ready, if you don't mind. Thanks, Harry. All right, so let's bring on David. David, tell everybody a little bit about you, and we'll get right into what a land trust is. But before we do that, tell people how most people own their home right now.
So most people own it in their individual names, which means if it's you and your wife, maybe as joint tenants. If it's you individually, it's Michael LaFIdo. Maybe if you have some liability concerns or your state has it, tenancy by the entirety if you're husband and wife. Most people are familiar with those ways of holding title. The land
So,
trust is
you get a
just
mortgage,
yeah.
you get a mortgage in your name, and you typically close on it at a title company, and you take title. So when it gets recorded at the county, it's typically in, Mr. and Miss Smith's name, or Mr. Smith if he's only on the mortgage, or it doesn't have to be that way. But is that correct?
And that right, and that is exactly where we come into play. We are another form of holding title, but all we do is act as a layer on top of your ownership. So you could still own the ownership in the trust as joint tenants, as tenants by the entirety. But on record title, the trustee is going to be the title holder. What
Okay,
does
that's
that
great.
do for you is the question, right?
That's great to know. That's
Yep.
great to know. So, what is a land trust?
So again, it's just another form of holding title. When you look up who's a record title holder to this property, who owns this property, you go to a county recorder's website. It'll be Michael LaFIdo often if it's your personal residence. You put your property in a land trust, and it will show Chicago Title Trust number 1234. What's the benefit? The benefit right there is privacy of ownership. And it's become more and more important. As Mike, as you said, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I've seen this land trust product morph into different things as the real estate business has essentially morphed. And in particularly with all the information that we have on the internet, the easy access to information. And so what the land trust does is offer a measure of internet privacy for your real estate ownership.
So, you know, we're talking about protecting your privacy, and many people, this is Luxury Fridays, but we're not just talking about high-end clients. We're not just talking to people that own the McMansions. You and I talked on our podcast, which will be released. David's podcast will be released in about a month. So you guys are getting a sneak peek of great content ahead of time. But we just got done recording our podcast, and we talked about privacy, whether it be politicians, whether it be teachers, whether it be, we're not just talking about athletes and celebrities, business owners. I know one business owner, he owns a lot of properties, and he doesn't want his employees knowing he owns a lot of properties, right? So there's various ways to protect your privacy, and a land trust, because people can Google your name, people can go to the, Cook County tax assessor and look things up. There's a lot of information online today. Isn't that correct?
Oh, absolutely. I said I've been doing this for over 20 years, and that has been the biggest change in the business for us is, high profile people, celebrities, high net worth people always had this privacy concern and would use these land trusts. Michael, I even showed you, I think, when we were at your Medina
Yeah.
event, a great
Yeah.
event because it's full of information like this. If you're going to work the luxury market, there are certain things you really need to know to differentiate yourself. And I believe this is one of those things. And like I had said on the podcast, it really comes down to first the realtor being sensitive to their client's privacy concerns. Does their client have a privacy concern? And if they do, bring this up. But as I said, it used to always high profile luxury market. Those people were interested in privacy. Now, with the prevalence of information on the internet, it's almost anybody who has a privacy concern. And I go to these presentations, I go, is there anybody out there who hasn't at least had some sort of identity theft concern, even if it's just your credit card company saying, hey, there's been some unauthorized activity? That's
Yeah.
what it is. And so now with all that out there, the best way you can protect yourself is to minimize the information that you have, the personal information that you have on the web. And a land
Yeah.
trust can help you do that.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. Again, those of you that are just tuning in, Michael LaFIdo here. You're watching another episode of Luxury Fridays. If you're watching a replay, go to our YouTube channel. We have a lot of great previous episodes. I have David Lanciotti from Chicago Title Land Trust on. We're talking land trust right now, and we are taking questions as well. So type those in your comment sections. And those of you that are watching live on our Instagram, I can see your questions, but the best way for us to interact with you is to just do that. You can go to luxuryfridays.com and click on that top link, or go to YouTube and look up Marketing Luxury Group. That's the best way for me to interact for our Instagram live stream, folks. And so you brought up a really good point. We're talking land trust, privacy, protection, confidentiality, um, you know, insulation from asset searches. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, again, you had referenced the business owner who owns multiple properties, right?
Yep.
So, that sort of ownership, conspicuous ownership, will make you a target. And I have talked to, and we work with a number of asset protection attorneys. And some of these guys do some very fancy work with the offshore trust. They work with very wealthy people, do some complex planning. But I'll never forget what one of them said to me. He goes, Dave, it ultimately boils down to staying off the radar. That is the first line of defense in any asset protection program, is keeping your people off the radar. And so that's why I worked with them. And so keeping you off the radar, privacy and liability protection go together.
Yeah.
Privacy is the first aspect in a good liability protection plan.
It really is. Privacy is key. And with so much information out there, I mean, we talked about this earlier, but when somebody wants, like I have a $2.5 million listing and we have a showing tomorrow, right? So we got the pre-approval, but I'm doing some additional research. Of course, I'm calling the lender to, in fact, verify that he wrote that pre-approval. But I want to find out as much information about that buyer as possible, right? And so that lets me know whether not just they have the wherewithal, but as much knowledge is power. And so I have more leverage if I learn more about the buyer. And guess what? They have more leverage if they learn about the seller. And if they can't find out more information on the seller, then uh, then it's a neutral. It's a stalemate, so to speak. So uh, privacy is really key. Confidentiality is key. And tell me a little bit about um, how it works as far as once somebody closes on a home. I think
Yeah.
you're notified on who the lender, if there's a loan involved, who the lender's
Oh,
going to put.
absolutely. What people don't think about, they close on their house and they happily go their way and they got a million things to do with their new house, right? What they don't think about is the impact of that recorded deed and recorded mortgage and the kind of information that they have just put out there that will be easily accessible on a county recorder's website and potentially with a Google search. And so they don't think about that and they go their own way, but then that information does get out there. And what happens on the internet, as you guys know, it's information moves at the speed of light now. So some other website picks up that information. All of a sudden, you're Googling your name, and the first or second thing down there is where you live. And it's like, how did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And, again, some people will have greater sensitivity to privacy concerns than others. And as a realtor, as a real estate advisor, as a real estate professional, your job is to add value. And I would say, if you sense that your client has a concern about privacy, definitely bring this up, this way to keep their purchase private. And what we had talked about, Mike, what we talked about at Medina was more and more realtors being asked to enter into NDAs, non disclosure agreements, confidentiality agreements. And I will tell you, if a potential client of yours mentions that, well, certainly you're going to want to bring up the land trust. They have a privacy concern. Right
Yeah.
there, this is something that can benefit them.
Yeah, that's a great point. Again, before I respond to that, if you guys have questions and you're watching the live stream, type them in the comment section. If you're watching a replay, shoot me an email, Michael at Marketing Luxury Group. Again, plenty of resources online. If you guys go to ctlandtrust.com, CT Land Trust. So part of the reason I brought David on is as a real estate advisor, as a leading authority, you as a consultant want to bring more value to your clients. And so we've had top luxury agents on, we'll have team leaders on, we'll have various guests on. And today's guest I brought on because most real estate agents don't understand the benefit of a land trust, how to protect their clients' privacy. And so, when I represent a seller and there's a high net worth buyer that wants to see a property, many times that agent will hasn't done their due diligence. Maybe they don't have a pre-approval, but they'll say, "Oh, my client is good for it," or they want to remain confidential. They want confidentiality. They don't want to disclose their name. So I many times offer up, "Well, we'll be happy to sign an NDA," which we would. My client and I would. But you bring up a good point where why not be proactive if you're working with a buyer that confidentiality is really important to them? Why not be proactive and open up a land trust ahead of time so that when an agent, as an agent, are writing an offer for 123, Miami Way, you are putting the Chicago Title Land Trust in this example, 18764 as the buyer and not disclosing that buyer's information. Of course, you might have to provide additional information that ties that land trust to an LLC and provide additional paperwork, or talk to a bank, have them talk to their JP Morgan Chase banker and say, yes, my client is the primary executive for Chicago Title Land Trust 123 or whatever the number is. And so there's ways to verify without disclosing names. Isn't that correct, David?
Absolutely. And two things that you had touched on there. One question I get from realtors when I say, "Oh yeah, if they say an NDA or you hear about a privacy concern, mention the land trust." There's a concern. Hey, am I advising them? Shouldn't their lawyer? Shouldn't that be the province of their lawyer? You know what? Yes, the lawyer should be involved in that discussion. The lawyer should be preparing the documents and understand. But you need to advise them, tell them, okay, talk to your lawyer about it. Something like so. It shouldn't, you're not stepping on a lawyer's toes if a lawyer is involved in the transaction. That is not an issue. I've had that question come up before. Say, hey, talk to your lawyer about it. The lawyer should know as well why they would have a privacy concern. And then the other thing you touched on was, people who are really concerned about privacy will know it very early in the transaction process. That's why realtors are being asked to sign NDAs. And so one of the ways you can really keep it private is have the trust sign off on the purchase contract. And so the earlier in the stage you get involved, the more private you can keep the transaction.
All right. So you brought up a great point, which I was going to ask you. In today's DigiSign and dot loop and DocuSign world, where people are busy or they don't like printing things out or they're used to signing things electronically, like purchase contract and disclosures, who would sign in this case if the buyer has a land trust and that land trust is ultimately going to be the name on the contract? Who would I be docu-signing to get signatures on the buyer's behalf?
So Chicago Title would be docu-signing as trustee, right? So that's
okay. So
who
Chicago
would be
Title would have to have that line of communication with their client. There's something written stating, right, yes, I want you, like I'm giving you authorization to digitally sign on my behalf the purchase offer of $5 million for 123 Elm Street.
When the trust is set up, we get a written direction authorizing us to sign off on their behalf. And that's how we maintain the privacy.
Yeah, that's great to know. I mean, I literally am submitting a $5 million offer today for a buyer, and I'll be talking to you further, making sure they have a land trust in place because I know privacy is important.
Right. So
awesome. Well, good. Well, this is really good information. Does anybody have any questions for myself or David? Again, David Lanciotti from Chicago Title Land Trust is with us today, and we're talking all things land trust. We're talking about protection, privacy. Before we go into common pitfalls and erosion of bargaining power, I want to see if anybody has any questions for David. Now, I got Harry Cherry is somebody that's joined us in the past. Your camera's not on, Harry. Turn on your camera or type in your question if you would. I see you in the waiting room, Harry. Oh, there we go. Harry, do you have a question about land trust? If so, give me a thumbs up and I'll bring you on. Or is it a question in general? Not about land trust? Okay. So I'll bring you on here when David is, we're going to be letting David go. Otherwise, type in your questions. I want to be cognizant of David's time. So right now, if I'm bringing anybody on, it's going to be land trust questions only, if you don't mind, while we have David here. Again, before we go on to the next topic, and for David. I just want to remind everybody, you guys have questions, type them in, not just the comment section, but if you're watching a replay. This is Luxury Fridays. I'm your host, Michael LaFIdo. We stream to multiple platforms: YouTube, Facebook groups, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Those of you that are watching on Instagram, if you want to ask David a question, you go to our YouTube channel, Marketing Luxury Group. All right. Um, all right, great question. We got a question from in the comments section. Is this something that you ask the seller or buyer? Do you ask them directly if they have a land trust? Uh, so great question. I know my thoughts on it, but I'll direct that towards you, David. Do you as an agent ask directly your client, if they're the buyer or the seller, in this case, if they have a land trust?
Oh, I think so. Absolutely. I mean, they might not, that might be skipping a step ahead. I mean, they might not know or understand what a land trust is. So I think you start by talking about privacy, but then I think you can certainly explain to them, yeah, if you don't have one, here's what it can do for you. You might want to consider it, especially if you're purchasing this property. But a seller's usually purchasing another property too.
Yeah.
So yeah, the conversation works in both aspects. No reason not to.
Yeah, you can ask them if they currently have a land trust, or if not, why they should consider it, and direct them towards their attorney, or you can send them to, ctlandtrust.com, where they can learn more information on perhaps why it benefits them to protect their privacy. Is that correct?
Yes,
All right,
absolutely.
great question. Thank you for that. All right. So let's talk a little bit about some common pitfalls or mistakes that people make when they're trying to, uh, I guess, maintain their privacy, but there's some loopholes that perhaps they didn't close up. And ultimately, people find out who owns the house.
Right. And here's one of the most common ways, Mike, is that on the deed, we become the record title holder. That's where people pick up the information. On the deed, the buyer Chicago title has trust number 1234, right? Unfortunately, on that deed as well, you're giving taxpayer information. And people will fill that out and put their own taxpayer information. That is public record as well. So, the way around it is have the tax bill go to the trustee. Instead of the tax bill coming to Mike LaFIdo at his address, it goes to Chicago Title at 10 South LaSalle. Maintains your privacy. So there are little pitfalls. One of my,
So real quick, just
yeah.
to reiterate that. So tax, when you have your tax bill here in Illinois, we get, each county is different, but in DuPage County, they send us, in May, it's due in July the first, June, the first installment, second installment in September. So instead of them sending it directly to my house, they still can, but it should be addressed towards Chicago Title Land Trust 123876, not my name anywhere on the tax bill, or they can send it directly to wherever the land trust is, directly to Chicago Title, and you would forward it on.
Correct.
Okay. Real quick, got a great comment. Claudia, thanks for jumping in from Florida. The agent that has more information is always ahead. You're absolutely correct. And that's why I have David on right now. We're trying to bring more value, not just to our buyers and sellers that are watching out there, but to, of course, the real estate agents that are watching out there. Okay, I got a great question actually from Harry Cherry. And Harry, you're out east, I believe, correct? But Harry has got a question. So his state does not do land trust. We do revocable and irrevocable trust, but not land trust. So talk to me a little bit about that. What your reaction to that is, David, and is that similar in the same way, or are there more loopholes with revocable and irrevocable or revocable trust? Excuse me.
Well, there are different types of trusts, and that goes, even land trusts, state by state, don't all do the exact same thing. Most states have some form of holding title to this. Some it won't have the liability protection advantages. So state by state, a land trust isn't a land trust isn't a land trust. Certainly revocable and irrevocable trusts, they are different types of animals that do different things. Again, that is a good question, though, for your clients, Do they have a living trust? Do they have a land trust? How are they going to have title to this property? That's a valid discussion for any real estate advisor. And, you'll be saving them a step if they could put it directly into a revocable trust that they already have set up for estate planning purposes.
That's great. And Harry, I appreciate you asking that. Great question. Had another agent say, talking about trust, bringing more value to the table is a great way to differentiate yourself from other agents. You're absolutely right. Salespeople want to sell a house. Expert advisors, consultants educate their clients. They provide several options so that client can make the best decision. Um, and Harry also said that in his state, they also see client name family LLC a lot there as well. So yeah, we see LLCs a lot here in Illinois too.
So be careful with the LLCs though, because those do have some public record where they can usually identify a manager. And Mike, I told you that story about
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So
yeah.
let's just say, uh, well, we were talking the former coach of the Chicago Bears, John Fox, in call it 7 years ago or so. He
Right.
bought a home in Lake Forest, Illinois, a mansion, $3 million plus. I actually, I actually wrote John Fox a letter after he got fired, uh, uh, because I had a buyer looking in that area. But I knew John owned that home because it was over the Tribune or Cranes, and apparently somebody did a little homework because when they bought it in an LLC. But you tell the story.
Yeah, so they did. Privacy was a concern, and they bought the property in an LLC. As Mike knows, beautiful property up there in Lake Forest. I was kind of disappointed we didn't get a land trust out of it because, the Bears have had several coaches come and go over the years,
Too
and many
many.
of them, yes, too many. And many have had their property in trust with us for privacy purposes. So he thought, putting it in the LLC, which didn't have an identifying name, it wasn't the John Fox LLC, didn't have an identifying name. Well, what happened, how this showed up in the newspaper is that LLC records are also public records. In Illinois, the Secretary of State's office, you have to register the LLC with it. And when you go to their website, there's a little area button you can click for manager. Manager of the LLC, you click that button, an individual will come up. The individual who was the manager of this LLC was not John Fox. It was Robin, I think it was Altarelli, something like that. You Google her name, it was John Fox's wife. That was his maiden name. And so, an investigative reporter, a reporter who's looking in, wants this information on this big, real estate transfer, they're going to do that kind of digging. So again, that's one of the pitfalls is thinking, well, an LLC will work. An LLC has liability protection, it has some privacy, but again, there's different aspects to each of these.
Yeah, that's a great point. So that is a big pitfall, a common mistake that, hey, if I own it in an LLC, you got to dot your I's, cross your T's, and make sure that there is confidentiality within your LLC. And it might not be because they can track it to a mailing address or tracks, who is it the executor of the LLC? Is that the right term?
Managing member, right?
Managing member of the
Managing member.
LLC, and
Mm-hmm.
connect the dots there. And that's what happened in that situation. What other common mistakes or pitfalls do you see?
Well, they usually relate to, they essentially relate to disclosing information on the public record that shouldn't be disclosed. Next most common one is, that having the person's name in the mortgage. When the property is in a land trust, the title holder signs the mortgage. So the trustee signs the mortgage. Very much like what we talked about the contract. You as owner, Mike, would give me a direction going sign off on the mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
And so lenders will sometimes put the borrower's name. They'll put the trust and then they'll put the borrower's name right next to it. And usually we have a head start. We see those documents a couple days ahead of time, not at the closing table. And that's when we notify the lender, we notify our customer, hey, this information is being disclosed. It's being disclosed on public record. Privacy is a concern here. You don't want to do this. So we
Mm-hmm.
do work with lenders as well. I told you I give continuing education presentations to attorneys. We give presentations to lenders, realtors, anybody involved in the real estate transaction process. We want them to know what this is so it can benefit their client.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit on the recording of our podcast. For those of you that are just watching, Michael LaFIdo here. I have David Lanciotti here. He's going to be my episode 208 on our podcast. But we're not just talking high net worth individuals and celebrities that should consider owning property in land trust, billionaires, millionaires. No, it could be teachers, it could be firefighters, it could be police officers, it could be somebody that's on the school board, right? There's a lot of, you know, we just had a school board meeting this week. I was out of town, but my understanding was, it was pretty heated. So,
Well,
if you're,
boy, Mike, all you got to do is turn on the television and see, like, this judge who's making these decisions down in Florida. I mean, he is taking heat. There are people, information was leaked about him. And what was that information? It's where he lives.
yeah,
And so the FBI, I've given presentations at the FBI because law enforcement agents, they're in a very highly charged situations usually, and they're
yeah,
dealing with a variety of people. So yeah, it is important for them to know that
it
it's not
is.
just, as I say, it's not just for the rich and famous anymore.
No, it's not just for the rich and famous. Harry talked about he is a billionaire that lives in their area, uh, and his house is in his personal name, and another where it's in a trust. But the address on the deed is his corporate headquarters, so people can trace, and that's the kind of stuff. And so, if if you are negotiating, if you're a buyer and your client is a buyer that is well known, you're losing leverage. So tell everybody about the Walt Disney story.
Oh, of course, yes. This is the one. Walt Disney bought up all that property around Orlando. So Mike was talking about leverage and anonymous offers to buy, and in the land trust circles, relatively famous story is how Walt Disney bought up all that property in Orlando, and it was through land trust. Florida is one of the big land trust states, like Illinois. So, like I said, some states it's different. Some states use them for certain things. But Florida and Illinois, very, very prevalent, the land trust. And so Walt Disney bought up all that property around Orlando through land trust. And then they would have in the land trust, they'd form a sub company through an LLC or a sub corporation. No Disney name on there because they knew that if Disney came knocking, Mike, what would happen, right? The price is going to go up right away. And that works in other contexts. It's not just for big corporations like Disney. If I think Mike mentioned a property locally here in Glen Ellen,
Yeah,
where Amazon, I think, was coming in to buy.
yeah. A good friend of mine had his buddy owned a house, probably a 450, $500,000 house in Glen Ellen, and Amazon was buying up the neighborhood to tear them all down and build a big warehouse. And they were getting 1.2 million dollars, twice the market value at least. But there's nothing on the market, so he didn't want to buy. He doesn't know if he's going to stay in Illinois, so he countered at a real ridiculous number. But if he didn't know it was Amazon, he probably wouldn't have done that. But he's, in his mind, thought deeper pockets versus if it was Chicago Title and some random number land trust, they probably would not have countered so high.
Well, yeah, and another example, like True Life, a few years ago, I got a call from an attorney, and his client wanted to buy a neighbor's property. It was up on the chain of lakes, on a lakefront property. They wanted to expand their compound. He's like, the problem is the neighbor hates him. He's not gonna. They don't get along. They don't talk. They don't like each other. I don't think he'd sell to him. I said you could make the anonymous offer. Ultimately, they can, reject an anonymous offer like they reject any other offer. But, if you're coming in with a nice high number and that's their ultimate goal, they might not mind that anonymous offer.
Mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm.
so there's other contexts this will work in, but the famous one that people remember is Disney, and it makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about negotiations. One of my business partners, Wayne Probrocki, teaches a CNE certified negotiation expert course and leverage and negotiations. You want to find out as much about the other party as possible, and they're trying to find out as much as you as possible. And so if it's in a land trust, if the contract's in a land trust, if the buyer isn't known and there's not a lot of information about them, you'll have not just more leverage, but you'll also protect yourself against potential litigation as well, because now you're not as big of a target, right? So great information, David. We shared earlier that people can go to the website ctlandtrust.com, ctlandtrust.com, and your email, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, is pretty easy as well. What's that email?
Yeah, for sure. I love talking land trust issues, questions with real estate professionals. My email directly is DJL, as in David John Lanciotti, DJL at CTT, as in Chicago Title Trust.com. Please, anything comes up, be glad to talk to you.
DJL at ctt.com, correct?
You got it.
Yeah, it's on the screen right now. This is how to get a hold of David. If you guys have an email address, you have an email, send him a question if you're watching a replay. If you have a question for me, the best way, if you're watching this replay as well, is shoot me an email, Michael at Marketing Luxury Group, Michael at Marketing Luxury Group. David, it's been a great honor to have you on. We've learned a ton. I appreciate your time today. And for those of you that are watching, keep an eye out for his upcoming podcast. Again, our podcast is the best way for you to go is go to iTunes or Stitcher. Go to iTunes or Stitcher, and that's the best way to find our podcast. Or go to luxurylistingpodcast.com. You're seeing it on the screen right now. Luxurylistingpodcast.com is the best way to literally find David's episode when we release it. Our most recent one was with an intern, Dugan. Again, I am just literally off an airplane. I was at this mansion you see on the screen. It's 17,600 square feet. We were in Florida. It was absolutely gorgeous. We were in a town called Reunion, Florida. And I taught my luxury training from this mansion yesterday. It was absolute blast. So if you guys are wanting to know where I'm speaking next, literally, if you go to our blog, which is called Lux Redefined, literally our blog is Lux Redefined. If you click on this little tab up here called Upcoming Events, you will see where we will be presenting next. So future events and past events. So again, my name is Michael LaFIdo. You guys have been excellent. David, I appreciate you today. And until next time, David, you and I will talk soon, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me again,
All right,
Michael.
you're welcome. You're welcome. This is another episode of the Luxury Fridays. I'm your host, Michael LaFIdo. I hope this has been valuable to you. Again, if you are getting value, please leave us a like, leave us a comment, a review, and shoot me an email if you guys have any questions at all. Michael at Marketing Luxury Group is my email. And our next in-person designation event is coming up in about 3 weeks. It's in Milwaukee. You can go to luxurydesignation.com. So until next time, I appreciate we had a lot of great comments today. I appreciate everybody. Until next time, my name is Michael LaFIdo. Make it a great day. And remember to prove others wrong. Take care.